बच्चा खिलौना चुन। Good evening. Welcome in RNQ Easino classes. Epistemology block number 2 justifications of knowledge. Unit number 1 unit 1 Pramanas first. 1.1 introduction. After asking how can I know, the next question is obviously how do I know the sources of knowledge. Obviously the external world is the primary source of our knowledge, which does not rule out the role of the knower. This complex issue of how we come to know has been treated insightfully and comprehensively in Western philosophy. Indian philosophy speaks of the source of knowledge or pramanas, which are made by the we can come to know and to know what. We shall however overlook the controversy in Indian philosophy regarding their number, whether one could them as in Caravakas, 2 as in Buddhism and Vaisesika, 3 as in Samakya, 4 as in Naya, 5 as in Mimamsa, 6 as in Vedanta and Kumarilas, Mimamsa, etc. Up to less than 10, whether a way of arriving at knowledge is to be considered genuine or not is certainly not an ideal question, but whether such a way is implied in another way is, according to us, not so important. Many schools differ from the others regarding the number of such where sometimes because they do not consider certain ways to be genuine, but oftentimes because they consider certain ways to be implied in others and therefore not independent source of knowledge. We shall consider only those ways which both in the West and in the East are considered to be really important. In this particular unit, our main focus is on the first source of knowledge, that is perception. 1.2 Pramanas as source of knowledge. Pramana, source of knowledge measure, is an epistemological term in Indian and Buddhist philosophers referring to the means by which a person obtains accurate and valid knowledge pramati of the world. In obtaining prama of correct knowledge, pramana forms one part of tripti trio. Pramata the subject, the knower, pramana the means of obtaining the knowledge, pramaya the object, the knowable. The three principal means of knowledge are perceptions, interference, and word perceptions. Pratyaksha is of two kinds: direct sensory perceptions, anubhava, and such perceptions remembered smriti. Inference, anumana, is based on perceptions but is able to arrive at conclusions that may not be directly open to perceptions. The word sada is in the first place the Veda, which is considered to be inherently valid. Some philosophers burden this to include the statements of reliable persons apta vakya in the concept of sabda, and are to more means of obtaining knowledge. Analogy, upamana, which enables on a grasp the meaning of a word, By analogy of the meaning of a similar word and circumstantial implications, orthopathy, which appeals to common sense, Buddhism and Jainism also pursue an understanding of how correct knowledge can be obtained, while rejecting the authority given by Hinduism to the Vedas. The relay on religious takes up their own as a partial source of knowledge in Buddhism. The two most important scholars of Pramana are Dignaga and Dharmakriti, author of Pramana Bhartika, as noted in the New World Encyclopedia, Advaita Vedanta accept various categories of Pramanas. Pratyaksha, the knowledge gained by means of the senses. Anumana, measuring along some other thing or inference, the knowledge gained by means of inference. Upamana, the knowledge gained by means of analogy. Upamana, comparison, a means of having knowledge of something in which our observance of its similarities to another object provides knowledge of the relationship between the two. For example, when the meaning of the word is known, for example, Gavya, Sanskriti, wild ox, the similarity of the name of the word goes, cow, will provide knowledge that Gavya is in the bovine family. Orthopathy, in the incidence of a case, the knowledge gained by circumstantial implications, superimposing the known knowledge on an empirical knowledge that does not occur with the known knowledge. Agma, the knowledge gained by the means of texts such as the Vedas, also known as Aptavakya, Sada Pramana. So, in this chapter, we shall follow the order usually given by authors writing on India, epistemology, integrating theories and insights of Western schools of philosophy, and adding our own comments and reflections. Note in this respect that were as we in the first chapter already made it clear that what we mean by to know or knowledge is essentially to know truly and reasonably. Indian philosophers distinguished between jnana or buddhi, unfortunately often translated into English as knowledge, which can be either true or false, and prama, which is necessarily true, the which therefore corresponds more to what we are calling knowledge. Pramanas are therefore strictly speaking ways or means to obtain prama true knowledge, but in point of fact, as it often meant by the term is ways and means a source of knowledge which can be either true or false. So, to avoid confusion, we shall reserve knowledge only to essentially true knowledge. Prama and use cognizance to stands for that which can be either true or false, Janana or Brudhi. 1.3 Perceptions. Pratyaksha. Sense experience is certainly one of the ways of how we how to come to know. It is not only just one way, but certainly the chronologically first and most basic way of man's coming to know anything at all. Certain philosophers maintain that this is not the case, since of certain things we have innate ideas independently of any sense experience. We shall discuss this topic later. Generally speaking, all schools of philosophy, except for certain forms of Western rationalism, associates sense experience perceptions to be genuine means of knowledge, even though dependently on their respective physiology, they explain its mechanism differently. There are some who maintain that only sense experience is genuine source of knowledge, thus denying any knowledge of what is not sense perceptible, or at least of what is not verifiable or falsifiable by sense observation. Empiricism. Some others maintain that our knowledge of good and religious language through possible take their origin from sense experience. It is clear how both are both of these positions affect through in a different way our understandings of religious faith and belief. We shall limit ourselves to certain important points. It is not difficult to say that since our sense often deceives us, the questions already raised in the introduction. The senses or sense experience are not always in reliable source of knowledge. Some knowledge the fact of this possible deception simply proves that it is not to the sense which know it is humans who know by means of the senses. We have already pointed out the knowledge all knowledge implies a judgment, and in passing this judgment we can certainly error not because however of any radical unreliability of the senses, but because of some extrinsic factors like hasidness in judgment, ignorance of some physical fact, etc. And what is more, even if we accept the fact that contrary to what common sense experience, qualities of objects like color and sound and quantities, example measurable wavelengths, the sense organs have still to be presumed to be reliable to produce regular wavelengths through the nerve system. So as to be correctly interpreted and known by the brain and to be measured on the appropriate instrument. But one big lesson we can learn from rationalism, especially of the idealistic type, is that sensations are not simply passive registering of the sense, that a lot of active interpretations on the part of the knower by his reasoning faculties takes place in every act of perception. If, as we have just said, it is humans who know and not the senses. All that goes into the making of humans goes into perceptions and understanding of the reality. Many things which we think are merely objects of sense. Example, space is human construction. They may be originating sense and from sense experience, but they are in fact rationally built up, and not only the reasoning faculties but their emotions, etc. Color the picture and they draw up the world around them. This is a very important point to be mentioned here. One point for the sense organs and pratyaksha. Then philosophy speak of external and internal senses. The external ones one which correspond five kinds of external perceptions are the visual, auditory, tactile, or olfactory, and gustatory. The internal one in India physiology in the manas of un, Antakarana. It is the perceptions of myself, saying of myself, hearing, etc. It is operative also in the perceptions of external objects. When I perceive something, I perceive myself as perceiving the object, but the immediate object of perception by the manas is the myself. Of course, those who deny a self, or those who reduce it simply to a chain of perceptions, empathic cities of kinds, both in the West and the East do not possess such an internal sense. This is an intense sense where one's epistemology is fashioned by one's physiology. Those who do either posit it or account for the perceptions of the self either through inference or some kind of higher perception. This internal sense corresponds to the essential sense in medieval Western philosophy, by which we are aware of ourselves and of our activities, are able to distinguish between our different sensations and activities, and integrate get the data of the external sense. In this way, we can refer to a common definite object of sense, the sense perception. 1.5 Pratyaksh Pratyaksha in Indian tradition. According to the Karavaka school, Pratyaksha or perceptions is the only source of knowledge. That is, what can be received through the sense must be treated as non-existent. Then they refute all the sources of knowledge. They admit only four elements, that is earth, water, air, and fire. We experience all the four through a perception. So perception is the only authority. There is no space because we can't pre-receive any such element. The world of common sense perceptions is the only world that exists. Again, the physical body self or individual. There is no consequences, no soul over and above the physical body. We do not perceive mind or soul, perceive mind the soul, hence they are unreal. Even consequence is a byproduct and an epiphenomenon of matter. Matter secretes mind as and as liver secretes bile. A particular combinations of elements produces consequences through the elements separately do not possess it. It is similar to the red color being produced from the combinations of betel leaf, uh, areca nut, and lime. None of which is red for the genus perceptual knowledge, which is ordinarily called immediate and admitted to be relatively so by Jainism, and therefore included in immediate knowledge, pure perceptions in the sense of mere sensations can rank the title of knowledge. It must be given meaning are ends into order by conceptions of thought. Perceptual knowledge is therefore regarded as immediate science. Is presupposes the activity of thought. Medical knowledge is divided into mati and srota. Mati includes both perceptual and inferential knowledge. Mati jhana springs in the following order. One Abgraha is the first kind of knowledge produced from the contact of sense organs with the objects. Two Iha, these following Avagraha, and in it the soul is able to appreciate the qualities of the visible object. Three Avaya, in this we come to know definitely about the object. Three Dharna, in this the full knowledge about the object leaves in impressions upon the mind of the man. The Vaivasika accept the presence of the external things and consider them as subject to perceptions according to Vaivasika, that is Pramana, by which direct knowledge is possible. The Pramans are two types: Pratyaksha perceptions and Anumana interferential. Both these Pramanas are known as Samaya Ghana, right knowledge, and it is by this that all the Purusha Shastras are attained. Pratiksha is the knowledge about the void or imaginations and error. This knowledge is of four types. Indriya Janana, this is the knowledge attained through senses. Mano Vijnana, in this knowledge there is a sensual knowledge in the form of Samanantara Prataya. After the knowledge through senses, this Samantara Prataya is a mental modifications in the absence of which there is no knowledge. Even after continuing seeing, the Mano Vijnana is born of the object and the consequence. 3 Atma Samvedana, it is the manifestations of Chita and its dharmas are like pleasure and pain in the real form. This is attributable without error and of the end nature of self-realizations. Vagik Janana, it is the ultimate knowledge of the things in the perceptible through various pramans. The object of pratyaksha is Slavalakshana. Svalakasana is that object in which there is difference in the form of knowledge by the presence and absence of its contract. It is by it that the thing has the capacity to do anything. Hence, it is said to be Paramartha Satya. Paramartha Satya. The southern thinkers do not admit that the external objects have no existence and all knowledge is in the consequence is not do they believe like a Vaivasikas that we know anything by direct perceptions as opposed to Vaivasikas. The Santratikas maintain that we have no direct perceptions of the external object but only the knowledge of their appearance. It is distinction in this appearances with which are the basis of the knowledge. Hence they are in the minds itself through the things which they represent. A external object are not known by their perception but by the interference based upon the mental modifications aroused by them. This view is known as Bahaya Numavada. Bahaya Numavada, it is representationalism on or direct realism. According to the Yogacara, the physical world has no existence apart from consciousness. Even if the existence of anything outside consciousness is admitted, it can't be vision. Vijnana Vedanas believe that all things external to mind are mental modifications. Thus, the knowledge of the external things is impossible. Hence, the thing which appears to be external should be taken as a mental concept. Vice Vaisishyaka Vaisishyaka recognize only two Pramanas, preceptions and inference, and reduces comparison and verbal testimony to interference. For Nyaya philosophy, preceptions is divided into ordinary Laukika and extraordinary Alaukika. In ordinary perception, knowledge results from the contact of sense organs with the external objects via extraordinary perception has free distinction perceptions of classes samanya lakshana complications janana lakshana and initiative yogaja the Nayayika maintains two stages in pre-receptions nirvikalpa in indeterminate and Sabikalpa determinate. Gautama accepts these distinctions of the perception. Sankhya believes in representative perceptions, knowledge. The internal organ meditates the Purusa and objects. When an object comes within the range of vision, the internal organ is so modified as to assume the form of an object. The modifications of the internal organ into an object is called vritti or mode. Knowledge means that mode as illuminated by the light of Purusa. Light of Purusa illuminations is a constant feature of perceptual knowledge. The mode vary in accordance with the objects presented. According to Kumalila Bhata, valid knowledge is that which provides the experience of an unknown object, that which is not contradicted by other knowledge and which is free from other defects. The Mimamsas uphold Savata Pramanya Bhada or self validity of knowledge. Knowledge is valid by itself. The conditions of freedom from defects and contradictions being satisfied. All knowledge arises as self-valid. Coherence and self-consistency is the nature of valid knowledge. Both Pravakara and Kumarila regard knowledge itself as pramana or means of knowledge. Jamini and means three pramanas: perceptions, inference, and testimony. Pravakara as two more comparisons and implications. Kumarila further adds non-apprehension. According to Vedanta, there are three pramanas: perceptions, pratyaksha, inference, tarka, and scripture shruti. In perception, the subject and object become identical because, in fact, both are the same consequences. The subject and the object remain separate due to the conveying of the ignorance, but by the direct union of antakarana through the sense, it takes the form of the object and shines in the form of the particular object illumined by the self due to the removal of the conveying of ignorance. According to Advaita, in the perceptions of an external object, the mind goes out through the sense organs, says the eyes, and reaches the place of the object, says a pot, assumes the shape of the pot, which modifies into the third pot. This modification is known as vritti. Vritti, the pervasiveness of vritti removes the evil of ignorance, vritti vyapati, and the prevalence of reflected consciousness illuminates the object Vyapati, which is expressed is the capacity of the mind to illuminate an object is because is because of the reflections of consequences Brahmana in the mind, the knowledge of experiences like happiness, sorrow, etc. that occur in the mind without the aid of sense organs is known by the witness. Consequences there is a mental modifications internally that is expressed as I am happy, etc. The knowledge of self or Brahman can be gained by perceptual cognitions. Since Brahman can never be objectified when we say what's revival Brahman, Vritti or Pati alone functions and not follow Vyapati since Brahman is self-evident luminous being, hence the knowledge of Brahman is known as Swarupa Janana or knowledge of nature of self as opposed to Vritti Janana or empirical knowledge. Theory of erroneous perceptions. An object perceived differently is said to be invalid. A cognition in which again the three factors operate, namely the known and the instrument of knowledge. The famous example of operate, namely the of quoted by Advaita school is one seeing rope as snake. The reason for this erroneous perception may be due to defect in the perception in the instrument of perception in the environment, dim light in the object, etc. The analysis of the process of erroneous cognition by Advaita school is known as indescribable error anirvachanya khyati. It is imperative to understand the mechanism of error. Sense of Advaita Bundis is an error supremized on Brahmana due to self-ignorance, and hence knowledge alone is the means to liberation based on the indescribable through of error. The rope ignorance creates a snake. Here ignorance is the material cause of snakes. The rope is the substratum on which snake is superimposed, and hence rope is the transfigurative material cause of snake. The precepts of snake superimposes the characteristics of snake is frightened and tries to run away. On rails of rope knowledge, the snake vanishes and the person feels saved. In this instance, there is no sorrow, but still one experience grief because of lack of knowledge of reality. Rope knowledge advanced states in the same manner in the world of purity is superimposed on non-dual Brahman due to ignorance. Purity is cause of sorrow. On wake of Brahman knowledge, purity vanishes just as the snake vanished. When he said and one really realizes the non-dual nature of selves and attains bliss. Ramanuja admits three Pramanas: perceptions, inference, and verbal testimony. He reject Nirvikalpa stage of perceptions. In Daivatya Epistemology, the process of knowledge explained as a mode of the internal organ. Knowledge always points to a complex or qualified object, truth, or defined as a correspondence with outside reality. Indeterminate and determinate perceptions. Indeterminate nirvikalpaka and determinate savikalpaka perceptions are also spoken by philosophers and maestries. We mention the distinction both because the terms often recur in Indian philosophical literature and because it serves to bring out a point which we insisted upon the earlier, namely that every perception, indeed every act of knowledge, Brahma entails judgment. Unlike some commentators, we do not understand these to be a distinctions between two kinds of perceptions, but rather as an insightful analysis of the two stages in the process of any act of perception. At first, I have perceived something vaguely without being able to say what exactly it is that I am perceiving. This is the indeterminate perception. It is only when I perceive what the thing when I am able to say what it is that I can say that I am really determinately perceiving it. it, and this of course entire judgment. So normally perceptions start off as indeterminate and ends as determinate. 1.6 normal Logika and supranormal or Logika perceptions. This is a very intriguing distinction, and it is worth giving some thought besides the normal perceptions. Indian philosophy speaks of a supranormal one. It is supernormal because whereas the normal perception is due to the contact sanicursor of the sense organ with the object, the latter is not, and yet it is still considered to be a direct apprehension of the object and therefore a perception. The supranormal perception is of three kinds. The first is the direct apprehension of the universals in the object. Example of the cowness in the cow. The second is the perception upon object which is not proportionate to the sense organ by which it is normally perceived. For example, on a hot day, I see a picture of the sea and I feel cool. Another usual explanation given to this is that the other side experience is associated with a past experience of coolness so as to produce as it were a twofold sensation, the visual and the tactile illusion. According to some can be explained in this way: I see a rope in the dark and I perceive a snake. The presented object rope is mistaken for the represented object, the snake of a past experience. Tied to these associations in some mystical literature become across authors who speak of, for example, touching, smiling, and tasting spiritual realities. Some commentators understanding this is symbolic language, but others do not fail to speak in this context of spiritual peculiarities distinct both from mere intellectual knowledge on the one hand and from ordinary sense perceptions on the other. The third is more intriguing. It is yogaja perception to recondite subtle things in remote places or times, including the past and future, due to an intense illuminations of the mind obtained in deep concentrations. It is intriguing because all schools of Indian philosophy, including the heterodox ones, claim that such a supranormal perceptions is possible. It is Pramartika prescriptions of Jainism, the Buddhi of the Buddhists, the Kaivalya of Samkhya Yoga, and the Buddhi of Vedanta. It is interesting, in fact, to compare and contrast in this aspect. For example, what Patanjali and Christian mystics St. John of the Cross have to say on the matter. Both speak of the power of knowing and foretelling future events, of knowing the exact time of one's death, of knowing and reading other people's minds, and of a certain kind of knowing all things, etc. St. John of the Cross, speaking of the power of knowing events happening in one's absence, remarks that such knowledge derives from the illuminated and purified spirit of those who have reached perfections or are close to it. We could interrupt all this in a variety of ways. Apart from dismissing it as just talk, we could, for example, interpret this kind of reception together with other phenomena which it is claimed initially accompany it, like superhuman strength, ability to go without food or drink for an extraordinary length of time, etc. The symbolic description of the powers of the perception of the deeper or higher levels of human consciousness. Today we often hear of a sixth sense, or even more generally still of extrasensory perceptions. And ESP claims are being made that experiments scientifically conducted are proving that the range of human perception is much wider and deeper than hitherto commonly supposed. 1.7 Philosophical basis for perception. In the next sections, we elaborate on the philosophical basics for perceptions as outlined in article in Wikipedia 2010. The philosophy of perception is concerned with the nature of sensory experience, the status of what is given in such experience, and in particular, and with how beliefs of knowledge about the physical world can be accounted for and justified on that basis systematically in internalist and externalist accounts can be formulated and distinguished. Internalism assumes the objects or basis of perpetual knowledge to be aspects of an individual's mind, example mental states which in principle the individual can always have access to. In contrast, externalism states that this basis of perceptions need not entire mental states of experience at all, but is constituted by aspect of the world which is truly external to the individual. A central question to the philosophy of the perceptions concerns what constitutes the immediate objects of perception, contrary to the positions of the naive realism, which can be identified with the everyday impressions of physical objects existing independently of the observed and constituting what is perceived. Certain observations are put forward which suggest otherwise. The latter comprise perceptual illusions, hallucinations, and relatively the perceptual experience, but also insights from the field of science. The most common belief about perceptions, probably universal in childhood and naive realism, in which people believe that what they perceive are things in themselves. Common people carry this belief into adult and professional life. In this form, naive realism is not strictly a theory but rather an axiom on which our day-to-day thought and language is based. In a sense, it is transparently clear. If I see a chair, it is a chair then that I see. When philosophers say that this may be in fact mistaken, there has been a subtle change in the meaning. The word see or pre-receive that is necessary for a scientific account of how the brain works, but unfortunately is not made clear by new philosophical terminology. This leads to talking at cross purposes. That childhood naive realism is indeed a belief that normally encounters a humbling experience of even showing the absurdity of such a belief. So philosophically, it is very difficult to sustain naive realism. However, outside philosophy, modified form of naive realism may be implicitly assumed and defended. Thomas Reid in the 18th century realized this sensation was composed of a set of data transfers, but declared that these were in some way transparent, so that there is a direct connections between the perceptions and the world. This idea is called direct realism and has become popular in recent years. Direct realism does not clearly specify the nature of the bit of the world that is an object in perception, especially in cases where the object is something like a seal-out. Wikipedia Wittgenstein features theory of language also points to such a direct realism philosophically and neurologically. When we analyze the successions of data transfers that are involved in the perceptions, we become aware of complex functions of the brain where the final set of the events occur. Perceptions would then become some form the brain activity, and somehow some part of the brain would be able to perceive signals provided by some other part of the brain. This concept is known as indirect realism and representative realism. According to this theory, we can only be aware of external objects by being aware of representations of objects in the brain. This idea was held by John Locke and Nicholas Melbranish. The common argument against indirect realism, as noted by Wikipedia, is this: that it implies a homunculus with an infinite regress of perceived within a perceived. However, as long as each stage of sensory processing achieves a different task, a finite regress are perfectly possible. The real problem here probably relates not so much to issues of infinite regress as to basic ontological issues raised by Leibniz, Locke, Whitehead, and others, which for or beyond the scope of this unit. Direct realism and indirect realism are known as realist theories of perception because they hold that there is a world external to the mind. Direct realism holds that representation of an object is located next to or is one part of actual physical object. On the other hand, indirect realism holds that the representations of an object is brain activity. Direct realism proposes some as yet unknown direct connections between external representations and the mind, will indirect realism requires the resolutions of the actual process of representations by the brain. Apart from the realist theories of perceptions, there are also anti-realist theories. There are two varieties of anti-realism: idealism and skepticism. Idealism holds that reality is limited to mental qualities and so is not real. Skepticism challenges our ability to gain knowledge of any reality external to our mind. So the questions of the reality of the world outside just do not arise. One of the most influential proponents of the idealism was George Berkeley, who maintained that everything was mind or dependent upon mind. David Hume is probably the most influential proponent of skepticism, a theory of perception attempts to find a middle path between realist and anti-realist. A theory is called the antiquism. The theory of posits that reality arises as a result of the dynamic interplay between an organism's sensory motor capability and its environment. Instead of seeing perceptions as a passive process determined entirely by the features of an independently existing world and activism suggests that organism and environment are structurally coupled and co-determining. In these sections, various ways of relating perceptions to the world outside are considered: internalism, externalism, naive realism, direct realism, indirect realism, intelligent spectism, and inactivism. Rather than going into the merits of these theories, we limit ourselves to very briefly describing them. Our main concern is that considering perception as the primary source of knowledge of reality takes us to the philosophical questions of the nature of reality. 1.8. Let us sum up. After understanding what Pramanas, we have elaborately dealt with perceptions, and then we have seen the philosophical basis for it.